What's going on, guys? It's Nabel J. Lee here at the Buzz at Buzzworthy Radio. We have a jam-packed show for you today. Later on in this conversation, we sat down with Joe Lansdale. He has a novel coming out on July 18th, which is called Sugar on the Bones, and this is part of his Hap and Leonard series, the 13th book in the series. And this spans from 1990. He has been writing this series that was also later developed into television that can be seen on AMC Plus. We got to talk about that, and I also got to geek out on the fact that he was a contributing writer to Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, and the New Adventures of Batman. You can see the theme here, but it was such a great time getting the chance to talk to him about my childhood shows and how he was a part of that. But first, we have a conversation with Edward Crawford. Now, his movie called 60 Miles North premieres on streaming platforms Amazon and Fandango at Home on July 9th. And it does tell the story of how Edward, the character in the film is Clarence, which is Edward's real first name. It basically shows about how Clarence lost the job of cash cab and what happened after that. And in real life, Edward actually was the original host of Cash Cab, and he lost out on that job, which of course went to Ben Bailey. So we got to talk about that. We also got to talk about other aspects of the film that resonated, not just with myself, but probably with everybody that gets the chance to see this film, and hit on some really, really important social topics in this, which I was very glad to talk with him about. So here it is, our interview with Edward Crawford. Check it out. I am so glad that you were able to come on and speak with me today. When I was well, first of all, let's introduce the person who I'm talking to. I have a knack for starting interviews and not introduce everybody at the beginning of this because I always just get right down into it. Edward Crawford is joining me right now to talk about 60 Miles North, and I did watch the movie, and like I said, before we started this, it's so much really hits me, especially in the middle of the film. And the fact that it's also your life story was the fact that you did this and told this in so many different variables. For one thing, I learning about the fact that you were the original host of Cash Cab, and then seeing Wild Story is actually, in essence, your story. Couldn't believe it. Like, I didn't realize that that was also a part of your story until once I learned more about the movie. Um, First of all, how did you come about deciding wanting to put this into this indie film to speak about your life experiences? I mean, for me, I feel like that would be so difficult to
Yeah.
do that, but
Yeah. I'll tell you, it was anger. It was anger. The fact that I booked the role for Cash Kevin. I was the first guy, and then my past caught up with me, and I was terminated, and then got sick, and I so much happened in that year. I went from living in New York City,
Mhm.
um, uh, doing well, to going back to my hometown, which is 60 miles north of New York City, a place called Newburgh, New York, and basically living in my childhood bedroom and in my 30s. And this was horrible. And yeah, I just a couple mentors of mine, Deborah Granick, Eddie Burns, they just said to me, listen, you need to write something, man. Like, something cathartic, do something. So I started to write the screenplay, and the first draft was me having it all, the cash cab, the Lyme disease, and
Mhm.
it just was not working. So that's why I decided to write in Wild's character as her being the one um, who has the Lyme disease.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's such interesting to statistics about the fact that 500,000 Americans with Lyme disease go undetected, and just watching those aspects of the film. So when you guys do get the chance to see it, just I feel like it's going to be true to life, and as far as physicians go, because it just seems like if they can't see it, and this is not a knock to doctors, but we do have doctors that do this. If they can't see it under a microscope, they're just basically saying this is just us manifesting it in our own brain.
Sure.
And I like the fact that that was played out in this part, and I'm sure this was your experience with that. And to finally find someone who completely understood and knew what was going on had to be the biggest relief for you.
Yeah, it really was like, first going to the doctor, you're told, you had one positive band, but I'm not gonna, I'm not worried about that. And I would say, but what about my symptoms? And they would of course ask my history of my life. And once I told them I was the cash cab guy, or if and then I said I lost it. Oh, you're depressed. You're
Right,
you're you're
right,
anxious. And I said, oh yeah, when do you run a fever because you're depressed? I've never heard of that.
right.
So yeah, and then finally finding that one doctor who was like, let me give you a spinal tap. Let's check this out. Because they basically um, did what they call, they checked for everything. And that was negative, negative, negative. So he goes, let me just give this spinal tap. And I lucked out. And that came back positive, which started the treatment. But for so many people, they go a very long time. And it's sad. In the film, you'll see some of the scenes are directly what I saw. I mean, I watched a female patient be told, listen, by the doctor, listen, you're too pretty for Lyme disease. You're too pretty
Oh,
for Lyme.
yes, that was a line, and yes.
Yeah. Why don't you just get a dog? Stop going online, diagnose. Get yourself a dog. And I watched her because I left with her, and she walks out, and the receptionist says, "Mrs. Fall, Mrs. Fall, your copay from the doctor." And this girl, this is a true story, turned around and said, "You can tell the doctor I'm going to take my copay. I'm going to go buy a puppy."
Yeah.
And I watch stuff like that, and I don't know what it is, but sometimes these doctors, they're so, I don't want to put doctors down because there's great ones, but they're so fully, like you said, if it's not right there in front of them, they're not going to look a little deeper.
They're not
And,
going to go any deeper,
right.
and that's really what's upsetting and traumatizing, especially when you're going to them because they are there to help you, they're there to help support you, but then in the grand scheme of things, that's not happening in certain aspects of physicians because if it's you're not seeing it under a microscope, oh, I can't treat it. You don't have anything that's treatable. It's all in your mind, and like I said, that's very upsetting and traumatizing. And when you
Mm.
when you put that out there in this film and then watching it because you also directed this as well and you're watching this all play out again in this kind of connotation, what was going through your mind just seeing that again?
It was hard. Like there were scenes where I would have to take a break because it brought me back to the point where I was at the lowest in my life, and I was scared because not so much. I mean, the cash cab had me extremely crestfallen, and the industry kind of turned its back on me because I did lie. I did lie to them and said I never had a DUI. So they
Mhm.
had every right of firing me. But after I was fired, I did not feel like that. I was angry,
Mhm.
and I pointed fingers at everyone. I pointed fingers at the kid that was in the car with me when I got my DUI. Like, why didn't you drive? I pointed fingers at the town that I grew up in, Newburgh, New York. It's the murder state capital of New York, a very rough area. I pointed fingers at the kids I grew up with, the kids I ran with, the town in itself. And it wasn't until when my father said, you only got 10 fingers and you've pointed all 10. It's time for you to turn those hands around and point them at you. You got in that car. You drove that car.
Yeah.
These were your choices, not anything else. And that took a very, very long time. So going back and shooting the film, there were moments where yeah, I had to take a little time. I said, because I went back and it was still there. But in the end, it's extremely cathartic. This is like my love letter. I said goodbye to Lyme disease and I say goodbye to Cash Cab. And now I'm moving on with this story. You
It
know.
I mean, it was beautifully crafted and well done. I mean,
Thank you.
I want to definitely point out about the fact when the parents come onto the scene in the film, and there was a line. So I'm gonna set it up for you guys. So it was a scene. There's a scene in there where Clarence and his mother are going to get Clarence a suit, and they're outside. They're walking. They get into an argument, and there was the point where the mother really basically was saying to Clarence about what about stability? Basically, what about stability? But then Clarence turns around and is like, what about happiness? Felt that completely
Wow.
when that dropped. That line dropped, and you just see Clarence's mom face just stand there going like, you have a point, but also financial stability, and that came out. But literally when you drop the line saying, what about happiness? The reason why I felt that and it resonated with me is it hit me with what I do here on this podcast level and whatnot, because my never talked about this before publicly anyway, but when I started doing this, and this will be my 17th season doing this,
Wow.
um, my mom actually had said some of the things that were said in this film by Clarence's family, the mom, dad, and the sister, more so the mom and the sister in the film. Basically going about what was the word that was used? Pleasure is not going to pay the bills. I think it was that word.
Oh, passion. Yeah,
Passion.
passion.
Passion wasn't going to pay the bills. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, that hurt my heart, because that's definitely something I've gotten as well. And, my mom, who I love to death, is also, while she's starting to understand this a little bit, but in the beginning, it definitely wasn't there. She was going, you need a job that's going to be this, like, for me it was like, why aren't you going to be a pharmacist? Why is this something that you're going to be doing?
Right.
It was literally the same spiel, and I'm watching this play out and I'm going like, if this is not my life, except he's lighter skin, this is my life right now.
I love it. I love it. Novell, I love it. And it's a true that really happened to me. When I was trying to be an actor, this is before Cash Cab. My brothers, I come from a big Irish Catholic family, and they would say to me, "You do know we're Irish. We're not movie stars. We're not, we're
Yeah.
we're railroaders, we're cops, we're firemen. What are you doing? You're wasting your time." And I said, I've been bit by the bug. I've been bit by the bug, and this is a passion, and I'm going down trying for this. I'm going down if I get nothing. But they didn't believe it until the first time I appeared on television for a movie. And my brother looks at me and he says, "How the hell did you do that?"
Yeah.
And I said, I said, because I didn't give up, you
that's
know?
and that's the biggest statement right there, is that I didn't give up. I mean, in recent months I've done a lot of events that I never really had thought I ever would have done in my life. I had interviews I never would have thought I ever had done in my life. And then I was sending my mom these pictures, and she was like, you met the cast of Young Sheldon. You met these
Yeah,
people. You met Jason Momoa. And she was like, how did this happen? And I said, perseverance.
that's great.
It's perseverance.
But yeah,
And, as you said, it's a passion, but I also said perseverance because, as you just said, I didn't stop. I didn't give up. I love what I do for this, and I wanted to make it as big as possible. And I get the question, do you ever get bored when you're doing this? And I said, absolutely not. If I were, I would have stopped doing this a long time ago. But there's so many different people and there's so many different stories to tell, and it's so interesting when you get to talk to these people. You're learning something new every time you talk to them, and that's why I don't stop, because it's
yeah.
never boring. I love hearing the stories from everybody, and it's just the passion is still there. And it's interesting now to see my mom, as well as more people now, starting to understand exactly what I do and how I do it. um, Instead of getting those questions about, why do you do this? Why are you doing this? Why are you not? in this field? Why are you not in this pharmaceutical field full time? Now, mind you, I am, but um, everyone knows this is where the passion lies, and now they're on the point of supporting it. But that support was never there in the beginning.
Yeah,
And I know with actors, they always go like, you have to have another job to
yeah.
support your acting job and everything. And I always say, I feel like maybe that's what I'm doing with this, but
No, no,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and I look at it and I'm going like, and that's not a bad thing, but it's just the bad part of it was is that no one really ever stood behind me with it.
That's right.
And now as time progressed and they saw the changes I made with it, how I revamped it, how I did everything new with intros and logos and getting t-shirts out. Now everybody wants a t-shirt. And again, not knocking everybody who wants a t-shirt. I'm glad y'all want a t-shirt. But where was that before is what
Oh,
I'm
of course.
saying.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's really where that that statement is coming from. And again, it's all coming from it all coming from love, but it's also going, but where was the love
Well,
before?
yeah, that's just it. And yeah, I mean, I have an appreciation for, before I made it, not made it, but got some breaks in the acting world. I didn't even like trains. I come from a railroad family, and I'd get on the train because I could take the train from my hometown of Newburgh, 60 miles south into the city, and it meant nothing to me because I thought I know one day that's going to be me punching tickets, and that's not where I want to be. And now I feel like I've garnered enough momentum here that I might have a shot. I got a couple offers now to really make a mark here again and catch lightning in a bottle for the second time. And when I get on the train now, I have a brand new found appreciation for what my father, uncles, brothers do. And it's really because that stress is gone where I know I don't have to do that.
Yeah,
Makes any sense. So, and I understand when they say, come on, you need something safe and practical,
that's exactly right.
right? I get it. It's because they love me. But I've never been a safe, practical person in my life. You know what I mean? I've always been this firecracker, this guy who was, you know, always taking it to the next level, boxing and playing sports and running with the most wild guys from my hometown. And not to say that's a good thing, but without them, I'm not the person that I am. And and that's not a railroader. So, you know,
I completely understand that because I was told by a friend of mine, um, speaking of the momentum part, he basically felt like now there's this momentum here that you're riding right now. I love that riding and trains is pretty much our level of conversation at this point, but it fits. We're riding this right now, and it's on a different level and a different scope that you were at before. And I also said to myself, I can't see myself in a safe space. I'm a very curious person. I like to get out and explore, and when it comes to finding that safe job, I'm also going like, yes, I may have that right now, but I'm also sitting here going, is that where I see myself? No.
yeah,
I don't see myself in there for X amount of years. I see myself doing this with the microphone in front of me and talking to people like you for
yeah.
that X amount of time. And it's something that's expanding, and it's something that's now gaining traction and momentum, and I'm enjoying every aspect of it. And I'm enjoying now that everybody see, more offers are coming in, but I'm and that's great, but I think a lot of it for me, I love the fact that I am it sounds hypocritical in a sense, but I love the fact that I see the support for my loved ones coming through, and not just with family, but also with my friends. One, I've never realized that people were paying attention even before I made it, like, gotten this far. Never knew that was there until people started coming out and said, "Yeah, I remember this interview from all these years ago." It's like, "Wow, you remember this
Yeah.
10 years ago?" I didn't realize you were watching it, and then they come out and said, "Yeah, we've seen this and we've seen this," but it was just it's amazing. I think that for me is where my courage is building up from, because now I take
Sure.
that and I have that with me and put it into this, and it's just been crazy. And I just watching it from your standpoint and looking at it from your vision, I'm just sitting here going like, dude, I completely understand where he's coming from. I completely
Eh,
empathize and I completely see everything. Like I lived most of it. I've been living most of it. And it was just it for me, it was very cathartic for me to watch that. And
I'm glad it had that effect on you, Novell. I really am, and I don't know where you grew up. I are you familiar with Newburgh, New York, by any chance?
I'm on the Jersey side, but I'm on South Jersey side, so I'm not too familiar with
Okay, so Newburgh, New York is exactly 60 miles north of New York City. It's a really rough area.
okay.
Um, um, uh, and there's a train in our town, and I got to take it for free because of the privilege I had from my family working for the railroad. So that pull of the city and the dreams that were only 60 miles away, and that I knew that I could get there for free. All I needed was just to get to the train station, which was 2 miles away from my house.
Yeah.
So that pull pulled me so hard. And the irony is, if I would have been a railroader, I would have been taking that train every single day into Grand Central and then doing a railroad job.
Yeah.
I was on that train too, but I was going on auditions and stuff. So, there is an irony there. Yeah.
It is an irony there. And we talked, and I mentioned the word perseverance. I mean, I just want to, I just say for you, you basically bouncing back from what you went through, having this now come out on streaming platforms is going to be on Amazon and Fandango at home on starting on July 9th. And
Correct.
and just as you just said earlier in this conversation that there are offers coming to you. I mean, what does that make you feel like now? Do you, I don't want to say vindicated, but as the word, but what sense of feeling do you have now that after all this and now you're here getting the opportunity to speak your truth for everybody to see? What's going on in your head now?
Well, I'll tell you, it first started with like the Lyme patients community seeing the trailer briefly or knowing what I was doing, and they saw the film at the festivals, and they thought, wow, there's a voice for a patient. And what I wanted
Wow.
to do differently was I didn't want to show like every other Lyme film, which are great, about how many medications they take, about I wanted to grab the isolation that comes with someone who is chronically ill. And I hope that I did that. And then yeah, my mentor Deborah Granick, who if in case you're not familiar with her or your listeners are not, she discovered Jennifer Lawrence. She directed the movie Winter's Bone. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
so she moderated my Q&As and basically said, "Listen, what you did here is very hard. You took you took health subject matter and made it interesting and not depressing."
Right.
Because it's so easy it's very hard to be creative with health subject material because
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, it's boring. And I tried to do that, and she said, you did it without flashy cars, you did it without movie stars, you did it without, I mean, think about it, who gets distribution making a feature film with no names? I
Right.
got very lucky. And because of that, yeah, there's been a few offers. I just read for Poker Face, the TV show. Haven't heard yet. Um, Working on another film that's coming up that we're going to start casting in September and shoot it in November. Um, so yeah, there's some stuff that's happening, and I couldn't be more grateful. And it never would have happened if I don't make this film. It's that simple.
It's that simple. And to that point where you talked about when you bring health subject matters into whether it's television, film, whatnot. I will say when you watch those scenes where the physician is telling Wilde about she's too pretty to have Lyme disease, go out and get a dog, just that entire scope of that, I felt angry. When you're saying it's boring, that was not boring. If anything, that made me pissed off in
Sure.
in certain words, because then you're listening to that and you're watching this, and kudos to this actress who is a newcomer, who played Wild in this film, and she did a phenomenal job. So shout out to her. And
Her name is Audrey Kovar. She's excellent.
yes,
Excellent.
absolutely, and
Yeah.
she played that part well, and just hearing how this physician was treating her, I just literally was just like watching this intently. I was watching on my phone, and I actually was like making faces, going like, "Are you freaking kidding me right
Yeah.
now?" You
And
know?
that's why I chose Novell to not show that doctor's face
Yeah,
because I thought it was more powerful just to hear his voice and not see his face. Just hear his voice because when you're told that you're not sick and you really are sick, you don't even see that person because you're blinded with hate.
you're
You
in your own you're in your
That's
own
right.
self at that point.
That's
And,
right.
and literally what you just said of how you filmed that scene, totally get it. And it sold the scene too. So just so you're seeing Wild's reactions to what this physician is saying, you're like, actually at that point, you're right there with her. I mean, that's how I felt when I was watching that, because I
Yeah.
am just listening to the physician saying these and I'm hearing his tone, and
Yeah.
I'm getting angry at it. I'm literally sitting there getting angry at it. It's like, what the F are you saying right now? So
Yep. 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 Yeah.
that was done. That scene was done very, very well. And that was a really great standout scene for sure.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And
It was overall it hit on a lot of points that I'm sure I'm not going to be the only one that it resonates with. There's going to be a lot of people who would watch this and go, I went through this. I'm dealing with this now, and looking and seeing how it was dealt in this film, and maybe they could get some solace in knowing, well, if this is what happened here, maybe this is what can happen in
yeah.
our real life, basically. And and like I said, it was just such it was I don't want to use the word escape, but it was an escape. It was an escape to actually just watch this play out and go, wow, I get to see my life in an alternate life. And it was, for me, it was definitely very not only eye-opening, but it actually gave me a sigh of relief.
Wow.
Knowing that I wasn't really the only one that has gone through this and had to experience this with family members. Having that told to me, it was nice to for me, it was nice to know that I was not alone in that regard. And that's how I felt coming out of that film. I was
Yeah.
not alone.
And that was our goal, Novell. Like we just when you're chronically ill, there are moments when even your family members give up on you because you might get a stretch of a week of feeling decent
Hmm.
and you don't look sick sometimes.
You don't look it, but
Right.
you
Right.
are.
You are. And you're inconsistent with your friends, like, hey, yeah, man, you want to go out Thursday night and grab a cup of coffee? I'm there because on Tuesday, you're feeling great. Then
Hmm.
you wake up Thursday and you're having whatever you want to call it, symptoms or relapse. And you're like, call your friend, I can't make it. That becomes frustrating for your friends.
Yeah.
And some of them stop believing you. They feel like you're complaining. You feel like you're
Yep.
using it as an excuse in life. No, no, we don't fake being sick. We fake feeling good.
We fake being happy.
Right.
We
Right.
fake being happy. And that's definitely, you know what, that's a conversation for another time too. But I will say this for now. That was a time in my life. I was fortunate that I had that one friend that was able to call that out of me, and it helped tremendously with myself and seeing somebody to talk about those issues with. Um, it was very it was relieving for me that I had someone that was in my corner to bring that to my attention, and I was able to talk about it openly. And that's why I always say for on my side of the spectrum, mental health is health. And if you're experiencing this, I know it's easier said than done, but please open up to somebody. June is men's mental health month. I
Yeah,
am such a big advocate on promoting mental health awareness, and especially because of the fact that men are more likely to commit suicide than women.
yeah,
And we have especially at this platform, we have an open space here. If there's people out there that need to speak, we have that platform here. I open myself up to people that they want to reach out to me, please do, because I understand about mental health because I went through it and I'm living with it.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
big it's a big thing for me, and I don't want anybody to feel like that, as we said with the topic of this, not to feel alone. You have
Sure.
something here. So
That's right.
so for you to say that, and again, thank you for being that open space, and thank you for having this movie to help me have that open space.
Thank you for having me on so much. Thank you.
I'm very proud of you and what you were able to accomplish and continue to accomplish now because of this. And I really implore everybody to watch this when this drops on July 9th on Amazon and Fandango at home. Please take a look at it, especially with with the subject matters that are discussed in the film. It's important to me. It's important to me, and if it's important to me, I'm sure it's going to be important to a lot of people, that especially with
Sure.
what's discussed. So I'm very happy that you were able to spend much of your time talking with me, and I get to say things to you because of
Yeah.
this movie. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Seeing this myself and watching it and seeing it from Clarence's point of view, which is your point of view, and then also coming back to me going, this hits hard. Not hard in the sense that it was difficult to watch, but hard in the sense like this really was on point. It was good. It was great for me to watch. And I think I needed that. So thank you.
Well, Novell, thank you so much for having me on, and maybe we'll cross paths again some other, down the road.
Absolutely. Let's plan it.
Sounds good. Thank you
Awesome.
so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Many thanks to Edward Crawford for stopping by the BuzzCast to chat about 60 Miles North. Once again, it premieres on July 9th on Amazon and Fandango at home. Coming up now is our interview with Joe Lansdale, and he talks about his new book coming out on July 18th entitled Sugar on the Bones, and it's a part of the Hap and Leonard series. We also got to talk about the book that he wrote that is being made into a film called The Thicket, and it premieres on September 6th, and it stars Peter Dinklage of Game of Thrones fame. And not for nothing, he got into me geeking out about him being a contributing writer to Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, but also find out what other DC Universe series he was going to be a part of, but unfortunately, it fell through the cracks. Joe Lansdale interview on Live. Check it out. For those of you who are tuning in, this is Joe Lansdale. Do we have to have the R in the name when we say that?
No, just went on the books.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. All right. So Joe Lansdale is joining me right now. And one of the things that we are going to talk about is obviously you have a new book coming out in your Hap and Leonard series,
That's correct.
Sugar on the Bones. And before we dive deep into the weeds of this series, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what can they expect in this novel.
I think this is one of the better Hap and Leonard novels. They're good friends, and they've developed that friendship over the period of. I think this is number 13 in the novel series. One is black and gay and Republican. The other guy is white and Democrat and straight. But yet they're like brothers. They've been together a long, long time. They worked in the rose fields. They've worked in all kinds of tough physical jobs, just like I did. So I borrowed a lot from my own life to have these two guys. But they tend to get in trouble, and they tend to get involved in things they probably shouldn't get involved with, but they do, and that leads to some excitement, I hope.
I mean, that's honestly what better way to write a book if they don't get in trouble. I mean, why would I read?
That's right. Wouldn't be any fun.
It wouldn't be fun at all. But you mentioned it yourself that this is the 13th book in the series. And from my understanding of it, this spans 34 years.
Yeah, 1990.
And their first
I don't know
appearance,
exactly what that is, but it's since 1990.
Savage Season, I believe, was their first appearance.
That's right.
And now here we are, 13 books later. They also were adapted into a series that can now be seen on AMC
Yeah,
Plus.
right.
That's that was an incredible feat. Not to mention the fact that you had a great list of people that were involved in this show. James Purefoy,
Oh, yeah.
of course.
Michael K. Williams, James Purefoy, Christina Hendricks. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes on and on. Excuse me.
How did it finally come about to where this was able to be adapted into television?
A director, Jim Mickle, is a friend of mine, and he had done Cold in July, a novel of mine. And so I think that he looked at the series and thought, oh, this would be pretty good. And I think Lowell Northrop, who worked with me on putting all the stuff together, kind of was able to hand them something that they could work off of and get going. And I wrote one of the scripts, and so they liked it. They, took it to Sundance, and Sundance bought it. And they might could have done better with it, but I also think that we were lucky to get it made at that time because it was just too different.
Right. It's not something that a lot of people are used to, and especially
No.
even if you're looking at it from just on the novel standpoint, especially from 34 years ago, I don't think anybody would have been used to it even then either. And we're talking now when it was first on television just a few years ago. If you're
Yeah.
going back 34 years ago, they definitely were ready for that. But I think that's what sets it apart, and that's what's so
Yeah.
interesting about these two characters. What you just said, their
I
characters,
hope so. Yeah.
um, and I think everybody would be entertained by it. And this isn't obviously your first rodeo with novels being adapted into
No,
either television or films. I understand that The Thicket is also going to be.
that's right. And the Cold in July was done. Bubba Hotep.
Mhm.
Um, there was, other things I wrote for Batman the animated series.
I wanted to get into that because there are two episodes that you were part of in Batman, the animated series, as a contributing writer, one of
Mhm.
which was Perchance to Dream, one of
Yeah.
my favorite episodes of the series. And just being a part of that episode alone was, I mean, for me, just as a geek, I, I'm right now enthralled and happy to be talking to you about that because I when I watched that episode and just seeing just the storyline itself, seeing Bruce's parents still being alive, there was no semblance of Robin or Batman or Alfred or
Yeah.
anything like that. This was now in Bruce's head, basically, and because of the Mad Hatter. And
Hmm.
it was and rest in peace to Kevin Conroy
Yeah.
for portraying Batman and Bruce in the same scene and having to do that for
Yeah.
that.
He's the best Batman and the best Bruce Wayne, in my view.
I am not going to disagree because I completely, utterly agree with you 100% on that. Just like I say, Cal Dodd is the best Wolverine. And so I'm right there with you. So I completely agree about that. And the other episode was Showdown, which the reason why I bring that up is I'm a huge Bewitched fan, and this was
Yeah.
Elizabeth Montgomery's last
Last
role.
piece. Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of hers. She did this great film where she played Lizzie Borden. I don't know if you ever saw that, but
See that?
man, it was fantastic. I watched Bewitched when I was a kid. It was new when I was watching it. And, I enjoyed it a lot, and it was among a lot of other shows that I watched at that time. But yeah, Elizabeth Montgomery, I was really excited that she was in it, and sad that she died not long after.
Yeah, it was from my understanding of it was aired posthumously, so it aired after she had passed away. And when I found out that she was the voice in that episode, I and the design even resembled her.
Yeah,
And
did.
so I was very excited to come across that in my rewatching of the series years ago. but just being a part of that show, being a part of Superman and the New Adventures of Batman,
Right.
those shows were my livelihood as a kid. That was my life. And speaking to someone who was a part of my childhood is bringing out the geek in me at this point. And
Well, I was a geek when I was growing up. I was kind of a cross between the tough guy and the geek, and I was growing up at a time when I was reading comics, which excited me. I tried to draw comics. I didn't really have a lot of art talent, but I did have story talent. And so that's what got me going. I always felt like Batman's one of the main reason I became a writer. And then Edgar Rice Burroughs clinched it, And so I went that way, and that was, I didn't have any choice at that point. I mean, you can look back on some of that stuff and go, ooh, some of that stuff was a little outside the realm in some ways, but in other ways, it really was an exciting, good story, and it got my blood boiling,
that was actually going to be one of my questions, is being asked to contribute to the series of Batman in the 90s, and how did that come to fruition for you? And even when you're watching Kevin play that episode in Perchance to Dream, just watching it yourself and just hearing the differences between going from Bruce to Batman in the same scene when they had that face off.
Yeah.
I'm just, the geek in me wants to ask the geek in you, what did that look like to you? Like, when you saw that, were you Wile E. Coyote, jaw on the floor, watching this play out, like seeing this?
Yeah, it was magic.
Yeah.
That's the best way I know how to put it. I mean, I loved one called Read My Lips that I did too. And I think that's my favorite for some reason. I think the noirish element is, but I think Perchance to Dream is a smarter one. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's a lot of fun. I don't know if you can't read in dreams or not, but it was a nice little bit of business that we put in. Yeah.
It was definitely one of the standout episodes. Then they had a lot of them, but I know a lot of Batman fans call to that one. I think the other one that a lot of people do talk about is the Robin backstory episode. The two-parter was another one. But for me, Perchance to Dream really did stand out, especially for performance. And I think that's why it is one of my favorite episodes of the series.
Right. I enjoyed it. I mean, the first three that I did, I was very fond of them. I did one Batman and Robin Adventures, and I like that one, but people don't understand that isn't Batman the animated series. That's a totally different.
It's a totally different show.
It's more. It's over the top more. It's funnier, and it's been said that I wrote the one that's the most popular, and I also wrote the one that's most loathed. But it's gaining ground.
That series was very different. When I definitely watched it, I definitely was going, obviously Batman the animated series was more grittier, it was more action packed, it was more of the violent nature, but you hit the nail on the head perfectly. The New Adventures of Batman, when that transitioned over to the WB, it was, as you said, funny. It wasn't relying on the violence and the gritty nature of it anymore. There was a little bit more humor into it. I can't remember. I think it was Batman the Animated Series. I think it was I think that was the series when, and I'm putting myself in the spot here, where Joker pushed Harley Quinn out the window. And it basically told the story of the backstory of Harley Quinn. And I think that was the animated series. I don't think that was the New Adventures of Batman. But that was another one that really stood out for me, because you didn't expect the Joker to be violently abrasive to Harley Quinn and just literally push her out the window.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty intense stuff.
It was very like, listen, this is a 7-8-year-old kid watching this, and you're just basically seeing the Joker just roll her out the window.
When we did Perchance to Dream, I wrote the scene where he jumps off of the tower was much more literal. He jumps off the tower and he's falling, he's going to hit the ground. But they were worried about how kids would perceive that. So what they did is
heard about that. You're right. I heard about that.
And Michael came up with a better idea, which was to do it somewhat like Vertigo, Michael Reeves, somewhat like Vertigo. And so we did. And I think that worked really well. In some ways, it's worse.
I thought it was scarier doing it that way.
Yeah.
Would have been if he were to fall and hit. I thought it was scarier than he just kept falling into the abyss where there was.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
Because you didn't know for when you're watching it. For me, I didn't know when he was falling. I didn't know he was just going to continue to fall and not wake up. Like I didn't know
Yeah.
what was going to be next from it. So that was the scarier part of it. And then when you finally saw that he did
You
wake
know
up with
what I
buzz.
did when I wrote those scripts is I didn't read them before I started reading them to write them because I wanted to be surprised as they happened. And it made the scripts, I think, better for me. I don't think that's always the case or always the way to do it, but I just had this feeling that I just need to let this come as it goes because they had a general guideline, so I could change it around and move it. There was nothing so set that I couldn't make change. And I did make some changes, but they had good ideas and they had good stories. And it was a terrific job. I wish I was doing it again. I liked it that much, and it wasn't like I was making like a fortune doing it. I just loved doing it. And I got talked to about the second one, which was, what's the one with the younger Batman?
Reasonable, right?
Yeah, no,
No? Which one?
no. This was the young guy, and Batman's old, and what was that? And he's
Oh no.
no.
I know which one you're talking about. Batman Beyond, I think. I think that's what it was.
That's it. Batman Beyond. Yeah. But they had talked to me about writing for that, but I couldn't. I had a novel due. The same thing happened to me on the Justice League, and boy, did I feel bad about both of those.
Could you imagine if you had the chance to be a part of the Justice League?
Oh yeah. Well, they called me about a lot of things change. What happens is when they change people, it sometimes changes who they want, and I don't hold that against anybody. That's what they do. That's the job.
I would have loved to, just from talking to you, and if you had been a part of the Justice League, I would love to see what you would have done with Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Because Susan Eisenberg, I'm such a huge fan of hers for doing that character. I always say that her and Shannon Farnon are the two definitive Wonder Woman voices, and their incarnations were my favorite, and love for you to have your hand in that.
I loved it too. No, that's fine. I also did a movie, a full length one called Son of Batman.
Son of Batman.
Yeah, that was a full length animated feature.
Why do I not know of this?
I don't know. You need to find out.
I do, don't I?
It's on I think it's on Max. I believe that's what it is. What used to be the HBO, or maybe on the HBO section, but they've got all of those things on there. And but it was called The Son of Batman.
So it looks like I've got some homework to do after this call.
You have homework.
Yes, I do. But I'm just curious how you would come up with writing for characters that are real life but obscure in your novels, like Elvis Presley and John F. Kennedy. Like I'm just kind of curious. Like how was that even an option?
Well, when I was a kid, Elvis was. I mean, I heard some of the first songs he ever played that were on the radio, and then I found out later that down the road from me, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, Ray Price, so many others were actually singing live in the radio station. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I heard them, but I didn't realize they were singing live. But they were like less than a mile from me at a radio station. And weirdly, some years later, they turned it into a music production company, and my daughter did 2 songs there because she's a professional singer and songwriter. She did most of the stuff with John Carter Cash, but she wanted to do stuff there, so that's where Elvis sang. So she wanted to try that out.
All right.
Yeah.
And I gotta ask you, because this is my second year doing the Comic-Con circuit. Have you ever done those conventions? And
yeah, I have. I don't do them regularly. but I have, the big one in San Diego is gotten really big. That maybe is too big. It's not that I wouldn't go because I don't know. I would make myself go on my own, but I've been invited and brought out by comic book companies. And so I enjoyed that. So I think I would, but it is tough. You get in and it's just people everywhere. I remember my wife and I were there and I said, we'll never find anybody we know. And then George Martin walked up and said, guys, we were like, hey, George,
Yeah, I went to so I did go to San Diego Comic Con for the first time last year, and obviously it was during the strike, so it wasn't really happening, I guess you could say.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun though. It was very interesting just to see what it was like without the extra stuff.
Yeah.
And now I'll be going this year, now that the strikes are over, and now it's just, okay, what do I need to bring? Do I need to bring running shoes? Do I need to bring this? Do I need to, like, how many bottles of water am I gonna fit in my case? Like all this
Yeah.
stuff. And it's as you said, it's gotten bigger, and now I'm about to experience just exactly how big
Yeah.
it is. And I never really got into any cons, and I started not just with San Diego, but local cons until last year.
Yeah.
So this,
I'm going to a
oh,
Comic Con later. I can't think of what it is. My daughter and I are. We did a comic from Dead Sky called it's from a book of ours called Terror is Our Business, but it's called The Case of the Bleeding Wall because we wrote a section of stories, and I think it's in its third printing now. I think a damn good comic. But we're going for that this fall, and damn if I can remember which one it is. I want to say Rose City. I think it's Rose City, but
okay.
I may be making a liar out of myself. I go to a lot of stuff and I don't always remember because I just have so many. But I've gone to a lot of Comic Cons and I've loved them. I've gone to a lot of science fiction conventions, Western conventions, crime conventions. I mean, you name it, fantasy conventions, horror conventions. Over the years, I've gone to many of those and I've been fortunate enough to ride in all those particular, veins.
Oh, absolutely. How have the fans have been when you've encountered them when you go to these events?
They're always great. They're always really sweet. I have some really dedicated fans, and they are very nice. So no complaints.
That's good. No, that's good. I'm excited for you, and hopefully in that circuit, I get to see you in one of those convention sites. So
I hope so. I hope so.
I do like to make my rounds. So hopefully I make my rounds to wherever you are for.
Well, we need to do that. We need to get lunch, and then we can say, have my people contact your people, then have your people contact my people. Then we'll have lunch.
That's right. And I know your people, and I believe he will
That's
make that
right.
happen.
That's right. They can make that happen. That's
That's
sure.
exactly right. Well, listen, this has been fun, and I can talk to you about Batman all day. And I feel like we should, when we do that, that's when we'll be talking about Batman all day.
Right.
Absolutely. But again, your next novel, Sugar on the Bones, comes out on the 18th, and then the Thicket. I'm not sure if that's the name of the film as
It
well.
is. It is the name of the film. It
I
comes
wasn't
out
sure
on
if they were going to change it or
September.
not, but
Yeah, September 6th.
September 6th.
Yeah, Peter Dinklage and Juliette Lewis, and I'm hoping it's going to be good. I think it is, and I'm excited about it. I hope to see the premiere of it later on before everybody else sees it. I'd like to have that opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And maybe I might. Hey, you never know. But
Yeah, well, you get a chance to check out Cold in July.
what is it?
Cold in July.
In July.
Michael C. Hall, Don Johnson, Sam Shepard. It's a really good piece of work. It's a noir film based on my novel of the same title.
My God, I love film noir work. That is literally one of my favorite genres, and
Yeah, me too.
I will definitely check that out. And Michael C. Hall.
If you think about it, Batman early on was definitely film noir. It changed a little, and then it went back to those roots. So it's very noirish, detective comics especially.
Oh, absolutely. And there was a Justice League movie, since we're talking about it, that came out last year, and there were segments in this film, but the one that was noirish was Superman's part. So
Oh, really? I wouldn't have thought him, but that's cool.
I didn't either. And when I watched it, and what was interesting about it was when I was watching his scenes. Not only was it noirish, but it also emulated the Fleischer Superman
Oh yeah, yeah.
during the story. So that was another reason why I fell
Do
in love
you
with
remember what it was called?
War of the World.
War of the World. I got to look that up. I got something to look up.
That see, now you gave me something. Now I gave
Yeah.
you back something. So
We
there you go.
trained.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we traded. We trained. We traded.
We traded, and I am looking forward to watching Son of Batman. So and
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it, and like check out some of the films. And then there's Incident on and Off of Mountain Road, which was done for Masters of Horror, and it was really really good. And then I had stuff on Creep Show, and my son and daughter did that with me, or they did the story, the original story, and so on and so on. And then what was it?
I know there was like what, Christmas of the Dead, I think.
No, it was The Companion is the one that we did for Creep Show.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was trying to think. There was Incident on and Off of Mountain Road was the one that was done for Showtime's Masters of Horror. All kinds of stuff. And I did a short Jonah Hex, very little Jonah Hex one, not the one at Batman, but another one, about a 12-minute one. It got better reviews than the movie, which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, it
Wow.
was. Yeah. It was really fun to do. It's only 12 minutes, but it's powerful.
Interesting. I mean,
It's based on a comic. Yeah.
short films tend to be when it's especially in that kind of caliber where it's 15
Yeah.
or less, it tends to pack a punch to. And I've noticed that when I covered the Santa Barbara International Film Festival when they had short films like that, it definitely packed a punch in the less amount of time. And I think
Well, that's true. I've always felt that short stories, especially in horror, pack more of a punch than a novel. Sometimes there are exceptions, but in general, short stories have more ability to take horror and hit you hard with it. Where a novel will sometimes begin to meander a little bit because you're trying to maintain that
I was
that
getting ready to
horror
say that.
element. It's especially hard to write for me. And we think I've written so many horror short stories and novellas, but a novel's real hard for me to do in horror. I can do it in crime, westerns, history, historicals, and just about anything. But oh boy, I'll tell you, horror, that's a tough one for me. It shouldn't be, but
It
it is.
shouldn't be, but it's one of those things. How are you going to keep this person enthralled in the story?
Right.
Like that's
Right.
difficult in that genre than in any other one.
And if you have an idea that'll work in a short story, it's interesting because then if you try to transfer that to a novel, sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. They begin to feel bloated, or they begin to feel like a lot of other things. And I'm not interested in writing a Stephen King novel, or no, I'm not interested in writing whoever, even if I might admire them.
Mhm.
I don't want to be anybody else. I want to be me. So I want to bring my own taste to it.
Is there, I want to wrap up with this question. Is
All
there
right.
anything that you haven't written for that you would like to write for? Whether it's like a character that you really love that's still on right now, or if you wanted to bring it back, who would you or what would you want to write for?
Well, I've written so many. I got Batman, I got Tarzan, I got Jonah Hex, I got the Lone Ranger. I mean, so many characters that I've written for. I think I'm more interested in writing my own stuff, although I could make an exception. I never say no. But I don't think there's any existing character that I feel driven to write for. But who knows? You ask me on another day. That's it. But I much prefer doing my own stuff.
Awesome. Well, I listen, dude, I appreciate you spending the last half hour with me talking and geeking
You're
out.
welcome.
I loved it. I love talking about this with you.
Yeah,
And
you're welcome.
I want to do this again. So please, absolutely, the door is always open for you to come back.
Thank you so much.
Joe, thank you.
Thank you, man.
Have a good one.
You too.
What a great show. I want to thank both of my guests again, Edward Crawford and Joe Lansdale, for stopping by. And make sure you guys check out 60 Miles North once again, premiering on July 9th on Amazon and Fandango at home. And then make sure you guys pick up the book, Sugar on the Bones from Joe Lansdale, when it hits the shelves on July 18th. That's going to do it for me for right now. I'm Novell J. Lee, making sure you keep getting the latest buzz at Buzzworthy Radio by logging on to our website at buzzworthyradiocast.com. You can also follow us on X at Buzzworthy Radio, liking us on our Facebook page, I'm also on Instagram at BuzzNav and at Buzzworthy Radio. And finally, you can listen to our podcast on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and Amazon Music. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.